Good afternoon, Texas, and thank you all for allowing us to participate in this special event today. For some quick background, we're a nonprofit founded by former Colorado Governor Hickenlooper, dedicated to raising cyber education and awareness. The cyber hygiene tips we'll be chatting through today were developed as part of an initiative supported by Google called Cyber for State Leaders. We're sharing these steps in some general statewide cybersecurity context with all 50 state legislatures this year. We are so excited to be here today. As you all may know, securing federal, state, and local enterprises is a significant lift, and we're all part of the process, whether a formal part or an informal part. We're all in this together. Your own cyber practices, or cyber hygiene, play an important role in keeping us all more secure. Cyber criminals are constantly working to find vulnerabilities, and we want to make sure that you have the tools to not be taken off guard by their increasingly fine-tuned tactics. We want to make sure that you don't get duped. We came up with the acronym with the hope of making remembering how to keep your cyber hygiene strong relatively easy to remember. But before we get into those details, we are so excited to have Texas Deputy CISO Susie Hilliard share some special remarks. Susie, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Susie Hilliard, and I am the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for Security Services at the Texas Department of Information Resources, or DIR. Our vision is to transform how Texas government serves Texans through technology. And one of the things DIR does is protect the state's technology infrastructure. In today's world, understanding the cybersecurity landscape is becoming increasingly important for everyone. I don't know if we can go a week without hearing some new breach or ransomware attack on the news. That's why we hope today's training helps you better understand the key types of cyber attacks we see today and how they work, as well as how to protect your organization and yourself through tools like MultiFactor Authentication and good cyber hygiene practices. Being aware of the threats can help you to be more vigilant in your online interactions, and knowing what tools to use will better arm you to face cyber threats today and in the future. To show how important cybersecurity vigilance and awareness is, we would like to show you a video that covers a ransomware attack in 2019 that hit multiple Texas entities and still today is considered to be one of the most significant ransomware attacks of all time, and how Texas responded to that attack.
When you think about ransomware, or when you think about the services that you get from the government, when a county gets hit, can you sell your house or do a title search? Can you get a marriage license? Can you vote in an election?
Somebody's medical records when they're in the middle of getting treatment is encrypted, and doctors can't access what medications they saw the day before. When law enforcement agencies are hit and investigative files are encrypted, the violation of somebody's rights to a speedy trial or due process. In some cases, it strikes at the heart of our democracy. My name is Brett Leatherman, and I'm an FBI Supervisory Special Agent over a National Security Cyber Squad in FBI Dallas. The FBI is investigating over 100 variants of ransomware right now. It's unprecedented, the number of ransomware variants and groups targeting U.S. organizations.
I got a call from my deputy CISO, and we always had a joke that a call that comes in on a Friday from him to me was usually not good news. And this one was particularly disturbing. It happened at 8:36 that morning. At the time, it was 8 local governments. By 11 o'clock, there were 23. A couple of the local governments had their water systems impacted. And at that point, my boss called Governor Abbott and said, hey, we've got a big issue. There were 23 local governments. They had the same managed service provider. It was a 3-man shop, and they were serving hundreds of local governments in Texas. They got in through them. They had a remote management software. They were able to get into their systems and then move through those remote management software to the machines at the local governments. They asked for $2.5 million.
We call these criminal enterprises kind of ransomware as a service. They have grown from individuals sitting overseas writing code and targeting, personal computers and small businesses to really a development powerhouse in some cases. And so you have the developers in-house constantly working on the exploitation code, the encryption code. Then you have affiliates connected to the developers who are going out and looking for organizations to exploit. Then you have the individuals who set up, in some cases, the virtual wallets. They want to ensure that their transactions are as least trackable as possible. So they work together in this symbiotic relationship to do just that.
They tested it 2 weeks before in one small town, determined it worked. They had a script built to drop this in memory, so it never hit the hard drive. So your standard antivirus would never catch it. We sent out teams to do forensics. We were looking for machines that were disconnected from the internet but not turned off. Because when you turn a computer off, it erases what's in the memory.
We see two different kinds of attacks. One is the accidental insider, somebody who allows access accidentally to a network because they're socially engineered through a trusted third party or a malicious link or something that looks legitimate. In some cases, they create domains or register domain names that are similar to a domain that the company does business with, and then they simply send emails with an attachment or a link that contains malicious code. In some cases, they are able to compromise a trusted third party to the corporation, and that becomes really difficult for companies to detect. The other way is the exploitation of a vulnerability, and that's a vulnerability in authentication or at the network perimeter that companies are not updating on a regular basis.
A lot of these local governments don't really have an IT staff. I mean, they were hiring a managed service provider to provide this service. So they're sitting there, a county judge, a sheriff, a mayor, thinking, what do I do?
These attacks are starting to have real life implications for, individuals in communities, and targeting hospitals, targeting government agencies elicits that emotional response, and the adversary hopes elicits quick payments. What we would recommend is not relying on the bad guys to give you your data back. It's never a good plan to negotiate with bad guys at the end of the day.
Every time you pay a ransom, you're giving them incentive to continue to pull these off. Texas does not believe in paying ransom. In this particular instance, August 2019, they asked for $2.5 million, and we didn't pay. The recovery effort on part of the state cost less than 10% of that amount. And so I think it was a good move to not pay. By Friday, so we're 8 days in, we started on Friday, ended on Friday, we had released all the teams and everyone was back up and operational. No ransom was paid.
I think it was JFK that said, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so reporting threat intelligence to the FBI helps us help the entire community. Any organization that has a bottom line and makes profit is subject to ransomware attacks, and the criminal actors are indiscriminate in who they target. Cybersecurity is national security. And in this playing field, there is no better partner than private sector agencies in working with the U.S. government. What we recommend is that organizations right now take preventative steps to protect themselves, both government agencies, private sector, critical infrastructure, and that means employing robust authentication, like multi-factor authentication. It involves ensuring that you're taking good backups of your systems, and then you're air-gapping those backups. You're removing them, keeping them offline. Preparing for a ransomware event is so important because if you're not prepared, you're really relying on the bad guys to give you your data back. And if they've already violated your organization, they violated your trust, do you really want to trust them to give you your information back?
Thank you so much for sharing that video, Susie, and thank you so much for being here and sharing your perspective and for all that you do to serve the great state of Texas. And one quick housekeeping item, if you do have questions throughout this, we're trying to be really good and conscientious of everybody's time, so we're going to keep to that half hour. But if you do have questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat box down at the bottom of the page. All right, so as you heard, and perhaps some of you have even already lived, the threats we face in the cyber world are real and ever present. And like a thief jiggling the doors and windows of your house to see what's open, cyber criminals are working around the clock to decipher your passwords to get into your accounts, trick you into sharing personally identifiable information that they can use to sell to even more nefarious criminals, or to impersonate you, or possibly just use your account as a stepping stone to get into another system. Most experts estimate that there is nearly one cyber attack every 39 seconds. So what are some of the things that they're trying to get at and how? Well, let's start with phishing. This is one of the most prevalent attacks because it works. Imagine checking your email and receiving an alarming message about one of your online accounts. The email says that your account has been compromised, and it provides a link to enter your private information. The email sounds and looks legitimate, but it wasn't real. Instead, it was sent by cybercriminals looking to phish you. Phishing is when scammers send out mass emails hoping to trick people into divulging personal and financial information by pretending to be a legitimate source like a bank, a trusted retailer, or a delivery service. Phishing scammers often ask the user to reset passwords in an attempt to steal information. Another popular phishing scam is trying to get the recipient to buy gift cards by convincing them that they are in some sort of trouble, or on behalf of, like, a boss. Spearfishing is a particular type of phishing scam that's custom designed and targeted to a specific person. Spearfishing scammers might use social media or other public information to find out things like whether or not you're traveling or where you work. Then they use this information to craft fake emails that sound believable. Just like fishermen cast lines with bait attached, these scammers send out official-sounding emails hoping that you'll let your guard down. Sometimes they'll even build entire websites dedicated to looking like authentic banks or businesses. And in some cases, phishers send emails with malicious software or malware attached that can automatically download to your computer simply by opening it. Once installed, malware can gain unauthorized access to your computer, cause damage to your systems, and run unauthorized software. Sometimes criminals can also install a type of malware called ransomware, which is designed to block access to a computer until a sum of money, often encrypted currency, is paid, as we just learned about. Once cyber criminals have your login information, they can change your passwords, steal your money, and even your identity. The good news is that there are ways to help prevent phishing emails from impacting you or your organization. Educating yourself and your team is the first step. There are lots of ways to identify a possible phishing email. No legitimate bank, government agency, or business will send you an email requesting that you re-enter your private information. Misspellings, poor grammar, and typos are also good signs of a possible phishing email. Other tools to protect against phishing include deploying spam and web filters and antivirus software, keeping systems updated, encrypting sensitive information, and converting HTML emails into text-only email messages also help. More of these tools are covered in the upcoming discussion about not clicking on things that you shouldn't. If you do receive a phishing email, the best thing to do is to stop, don't click anything, don't share the email except with IT support, and contact them directly. We'll dig into a bit more about that later on. but next we're gonna dig into, and I'm so sorry. I'm having a little bit of some technical difficulties. So let me there we go. All right. But we wanted to highlight a few other lesser known attacks that could compromise your data. The first is the physical security of your device. Working in public spaces like state or local government buildings can create an even larger target on your accounts and your devices. So make sure to keep your devices on you as much as possible. And when not possible, make sure your settings are such that someone couldn't open your computer or your phone without your account information. For this, you can go to the settings on your computers or your phone and set your screen to lock within a short time of you stepping away, 2 to 3 minutes, for example. Don't forget to physically lock your devices as well. If you leave your computer in your car or your phone in your car, cover it up so it's not obvious that it's in there. And I know we live sometimes in a place where we feel like we can let our guard down a little bit, but make sure you're locking your vehicle. Or if you leave your office, try to make sure that you're locking that as well, or keep it in a locked drawer. Finally, record in a secure place that's not on your devices what kind of device you have and its unique device number. If your device is actually stolen, we've got some additional tips on our website for locating your device and remotely turning it off before criminals can hack into it. You can access that at cyberforstateleaders.org under resources. We want to cover a final lesser known attack, but one that could compromise all of your security, and that's SIM swapping. For those of you unfamiliar with this is an attack that was successfully executed against Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey. A SIM card is basically a small chip in your phone that cell phone carriers use to identify your phone. SIM swapping happens when someone convinces your cellular provider that they are you and that they need your phone number applied to a new SIM card in their possession. When that happens, your phone traffic is diverted to a criminal. To protect against this, contact your cellular provider as soon as possible and set up a PIN for your account that only you know. The remainder of the threats that are covered as we dig into more details on what it means to not get duped. Basically, it's deploy multi-factor authentication, update software, passwords, manage and protect them, encrypt important emails and backups, and don't click on things you shouldn't. All right, so let's jump in with multi-factor authentication. We talked a little bit about how criminals are trying to get into your passwords to get into your accounts. Well, setting up multi-factor authentication can provide an excellent extra layer of defense against those types of attacks. Multi-factor authentication is basically a way to ensure that you are you, using something that you know, something that you have, and or something that you are. This could be a combination of your password or PIN and a code sent to your email or phone. The use of Face ID or an authenticator app from Google or Microsoft that automatically generates a new code every time you use it, or even a physical key that does the same thing. Most accounts are moving towards requiring MFA when you sign up, but your older accounts like an email or a financial account, make sure to go to your settings, look for security or passwords, however it's categorized, and where it says set up MFA, just go ahead and do that. Because if a criminal was successful in getting your password, you'll get a message with an extra step that alerts you to the fact that someone who isn't you is trying to access your account. And if that does happen, then make sure to change your passwords to your critical accounts immediately. All right, next is updating software. Cyber threats are constantly evolving, and your software is too, in order to keep up with those threats and to fix bugs in the system. Going back to the jiggling door handles analogy, imagine your teenager come home late one night and she didn't lock the door. The longer that door sits unlocked, the more your house is vulnerable to a thief trying all the options. But a software update is like you getting up and immediately locking that door once you've heard them get home. You're keeping that door shut. So when you see updates available, a dialog pop-up box on your phone or computer, do the update as soon as possible. If you set it up for later tonight, then try to keep to it and actually do the update later that night. Again, the longer you don't do those updates, the older your software is relative to cyber criminals' attempts. And where possible, try to make those updates just automatic so you don't even have to think about it. But just whatever you do, make sure to keep your devices up to date. All right, let's tackle passwords next. Passwords really are the largest source of our vulnerabilities. The average person has over 150 accounts, And since we can assume that we're not all creating a unique and complex password for each account, we've likely got some serious breadcrumb trails to our most treasured information, or our actual treasure if we use the same passwords to our online financial accounts. But before we get into how to best manage your passwords, we need to better understand how passwords are hacked. When you create a new password, the site jumbles your password up to create what's called a hash, and that hash gets saved in a database. When a cybercriminal gets access to that database, they run those hashes against a word list using incredibly powerful computers. And once they get a match, they have your password. The simpler your password is, the easier it is for them to match with that word list. So for example, a password that's say like 8 characters long and all lowercase could take just seconds to crack, even if those letters are all jumbled up. A password that's 10 characters long with say 8 letters and 2 special characters, things like exclamation points or ampersands, could take hours to crack. Or consider a password that's at least 12 characters long and has a random mix of uppercase and lowercase, special characters and numbers. That could take years. And criminals don't want to sit around that long to get into your password. They'll move on to easier targets. So, how do you do this for all of your accounts? Well, we suggest looking into a password manager, and there are several now. Examples include LastPass or Dashlane, because these will help generate those crazy complex passwords for you all. All you have to do is remember the one super crazy complex password that you created to get into the manager. And to create that strong password, there are a few tips you can use to effectively complicate that password. First, think of the phrase that only you would know. Make sure it's not something that ties back to information you've shared on social media or that could be widely known about you. Now strip out the words of that phrase and leave only the first letter for each word in that phrase. Next, try to randomize the upper and lower case pattern of those first letters. And finally, get a little creative about how you mix up those letters with the numbers or special characters. And with that, you'll have a much more secure password than I love Fluffy. Okay, we're almost done. We just have 2 final tips to go. The next is encrypting important emails and files and backing those important files up. These 2 are put together because they are complementary. Encrypting your files and emails can help protect against malware attacks, and back your important files up helps you protect yourself in case someone does get into your device. Sending an unencrypted email is like basically sending a postcard through the mail. There's a chance that at least a dozen people have read its contents before it gets to its destination. When you encrypt an email, you basically add an envelope to your message so that only you and the recipient can read it. Before you deploy this option, make sure to find out if your intended recipient has encryption set up in their email system. It's pretty easy to identify because it should come up as an option in your toolbar or in the More section of composing an email. And if they do, then simply select it and you should be good to go. But if your intended recipient doesn't have a way to support encrypted emails, like it isn't built into their settings, for example, you can instead encrypt the file that you're sending. This can be done by WinZipping the file, available when you save a document at Word, or just use password in Macs, and then add the password. And make sure you send that password to your recipient over the phone or text. Don't email it to them. And on the last point of backing your files up, we recommend that you back your files up regularly. And regular here is kind of according to your level of comfort and work on time-sensitive documents. We recommend that you deploy a both-and approach here too when it comes to backing it up to a cloud-based system as well as an external hard drive. I know what's helped me a lot in this area is setting a calendar reminder to just back my files up monthly and to make sure that my automatic updates to the cloud are active and ongoing. Okay, we're at our final point here, and this is don't click on things you shouldn't, and what to do if you accidentally did. We covered a fair bit of this under the phishing discussion, but we wanted to throw a few more tips out there to help prevent taking cyber criminals' bait. One way to identify quickly whether or not you're on a shady website. You can figure this out if you try to leave the website and you get bombarded with multiple messages asking you to confirm that you want to leave or install our antivirus program. Those are some big flags that you need to just close out of your web browser entirely and immediately. And make sure you don't provide any information on your way out. If you still can't get out of that page and you're using a Windows computer, try to go to your Start button and select Task Manager. Then find your web browser and end the task. And if you're using a Mac, Go to the Apple icon and select Force Quit. Find your web browser and shut it down. At this point, it might be a good idea to do a quick antivirus scan to just make sure nothing icky made its way onto your device. And you can get onto iffy sites from your general searches or potentially by clicking on a link sent to you via suspicious email or text. Remember, make sure that you recognize the source of the email or text and apply a common sense approach to clicking on it. If there are weird misspellings or an odd sense of urgency, take a deep breath and investigate more before clicking or responding. Finally, make sure to look for a padlock at the top of the web address before submitting any personal or financial information. This will help indicate that the website is more secure. And if you do accidentally click on things and stuff starts going sideways, disconnect your device from the internet, turn it off, and contact your IT support in your organization immediately. They'll help you with the next steps from there. All right, that is pretty much it for us today. We don't see any additional questions, but I wanted to just thank you all so much for your time today. We truly hope that you learned something and can incorporate some of these new habits into your cyber routine. Please be on the lookout for a certificate for having participated and stay vigilant. We're all in this together. Thank you all so much, Texas.